Right. We are live. Welcome, everybody. Good evening. It is Sunday, April 15th, and glad to have everybody here. This is Matt White, your host of Other Side of the Selfie, and I am back fresh from a nice long weekend, enjoying some time with my family down in South Carolina. I got to spend some time playing golf with my dad and my brother, and saw my mom, my other brother, and nieces and nephews, all that fun stuff.
Everybody here. This is Matt White, your host of Other Side of the Selfie.
I broke the cardinal rule, man.
Yeah, you did. That's all good. All good. So yeah, tonight I have Chris Delaney and Victoria. Say it for me.
Strelnikova.
I should have asked that before, and I thought about it a million times until I just asked. These guys are both in network marketing together. So just as a remind, Other Side of the Selfie is all about those that are supporting and are coming alongside their spouse, significant other, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it might be, that is in the network marketing world, and doing what we can do to support that other person in our life. In this particular case, Chris and Victoria do it together, so it's going to be a unique conversation. I'm excited to have this conversation. So I'm going to give you each just a couple minutes to introduce yourself, a quick background. You guys are in Columbus, Ohio. We're in Akron, Ohio. So although we haven't met in person yet, we will do soon. But I assume, did you guys get some of the weather, the rain that just came through, or did you avoid that?
Oh,
you
yeah.
Did? Yeah, it was good stuff.
Lots of rain.
We hid out in the basement for a little bit because there was a tornado warning up here, but it was a good time.
Oh,
all right, so I'm going to pass it over to you. Victoria, why don't you start? Just give us a quick background, who you are, maybe whatever kind of background you want to share, and then we'll pass it over to Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's always important for me to share that I'm not even first generation here in the United States. My kiddos will be. So I came to the U.S. from Ukraine when I was 5 years old with my parents, and they separated. And I'm very proud to say I was raised by a single mom. And I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I'm a NorCal girl. And definitely grew up with a lot of diversity and different people around me. My background is pretty diverse as well. Aside from getting my BA in sociology, I got my master's in organization and leadership. But what's really interesting about that is I really felt like I was kind of sold a six-figure dream, and really by the time I graduated, I had a five-figure nightmare with student loan debt. So I think some people could probably relate to that, which is interesting because I had the typical American dream as an immigrant, right? Get your education, get a great job, and all that good stuff. But I've done retail, I've done hospitality. I was a makeup artist for a few years as well. Done the corporate route as well, and also worked for a high power couple down in Silicon Valley, and learned a lot about what it means to be an entrepreneur and to work and see two incredible people that were partnered up in business and doing a startup, which is so interesting because right around that time is when I met Chris and transitioned to what we're doing full time. So
Gotcha.
It's a little bit about me.
Yeah, cool. And that's been about a year that you've been in network marketing and in this business, yes?
Chris and I have been in the business together for close to a year. I have actually been in the business for 3 years, almost 3 years. So June will be 3 years. Yeah. So I was doing it very part-time, spare time, and then now full-time, obviously. So.
Oop. Hey, Matt, are you there?
Matt, you're frozen. Hello?
I think it was your story. It was beautiful.
It was mesmerizing.
He's having some weather up there, so I think that might be part of the problem.
Uh-oh. Matt, you're totally frozen. We can't hear you or see you.
He said, go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, Chris, you go ahead. Share your story and your introduction, please, sir.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So unlike what I would say in a corporate interview, my life started in upstate New York, where I lived most of my life. I grew up with a single mom who had breast cancer for a long time. The unique thing about that is for many years, we thought it was actually stage 2 breast cancer. She went through all the operations and everything else. But before I graduated high school, we found out it was actually stage 4. And so she lived for 21 years with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. I was her primary, well, along with one of my brothers, caretaker. I lost her about 10 years ago, and kind of went through the event of death and then the business of death with her will and everything else. So really at 21, I was kind of on my own trying to figure things out. I went to a really good high school, even though we were living with food stamps and everything else in high school. I really saw a lot of my friends going to college and not receiving anything for that. Like they were going to school and graduating with no prospects, no nothing. And for it finally, stuck in my mind that, I wasn't quite clear what I was going to get by going to school. So I went into the restaurant business for a long time, about 12 years, did everything from bussing tables to bartending to managing, and found myself in a place where I was kind of living the dream for a little while. And ultimately, I just knew that there was no growing in that business. I went into a position where I was kind of sleeping in my car for a little bit, trying to figure things out. So my 20s were really chasing after income, right? So, I went from the restaurant business into a corporate job with a Fortune 500 company, worked my butt off to make up for the degree I didn't have, worked my way into a mid-level management position, had a lot of employees working for me, went from New York to Georgia. That's where things got rough. I actually got married in my 20s. The only reason I share that is because, I thought that's what you were supposed to do. Go to school, get married, have a good job. And honestly, I wasn't growing at all. I left my corporate job after, some difficulties there and, had no game plan and moved broke from Georgia to West Texas, trying to figure things out. And as I was there, I learned the principles of building relationships. I actually got into the insurance world with a great company. Really started working harder for myself than I worked for anyone else. I got introduced to personal development. I was doing really well. I built a solid income, best I'd ever had in my entire life at 31 years old. So it was a fresh start for me. Interesting thing is that I saw our opportunity from a good friend of mine I used to serve tables with 7 years prior, dropped it in my lap. I had a lot of respect for him. He was going to seminars and classes and everything else. And so I asked him what it was, and he didn't push me. He just let me see the information. I got my questions answered, got started. So we got started last year in January in a market that had nobody else doing it. We broke some company records really quickly, and we were off and running. We created a market. A year later, here we are today in Columbus, Ohio, because we came here for a trip through the company. We just loved the area and had nothing else tying us down, so we just moved here to serve our team across the country. And we just really believe in servant leadership. So it's just been a blessing. I always say Victoria was my best recruit ever. Awesome. I met her on Facebook through one of our private forums, and she can tell that story better than I can. But we decided to go unconventional, man. I reached out to her. She was 2,000 miles away, and she was in San Fran, a place I always wanted to go to. And I had a really good month, my 4th month in the business. Highly unusual for somebody brand new to the industry. This is my first and only company. I went full time into our business, went out there the 4th month in the business and moved her in her tiny little Lexus from California to Texas. And we've been building the airplane in midair since then. So we've just been building this thing brick by brick as we go. That's
awesome. Sorry, I dropped out on you there for a second.
That's okay.
That is the joys of technology.
It's better than being in front of 1,000 people and not having technology work. You know what I mean?
That's right. That's right. Cool. So why don't you tell me a little bit, maybe we'll start with Victoria since you've been in the business a little bit longer. Tell me how and when you got involved in the network marketing world, and maybe a little bit of why, and maybe kind of how that changed your perspective on life in general. And you said you've done some of the corporate world and done some of these other things, but how did that change your life otherwise, and your perspective on business and people and that kind of thing?
Yes, absolutely. That's a really great question. So having, this opportunity came to me in my early 30s. I think I was actually 30 years old. And so in that time, from the time I was like 15 to 30, I had already had half a life's worth of work experience, having been in all of those different industries. And so I got to see a recurring theme of I think first and foremost, the fact that I was always going to be building someone else's dream. The fact that someone else was placing a value and a worth on me. And so who I am was being dictated and kind of decided upon by someone else. And I didn't really like that a whole lot. Because ultimately, I'm very spiritual, and ultimately I believe we are infinite beings. And so how can someone that is an infinite being, that has infinite potential, have a dollar sign attached to them that, oh, okay, so for this job, you're worth $25 an hour or $15 an hour or $16 an hour. So those were some of the things that I didn't like. I have a little bit of trouble with authority. I don't like being told what to do. Ever since I was a kid, I probably shared that with Chris at one point or another. But, I'm an only child. And, I was a little rough and tough when I was growing up because I had a very traumatic childhood. And so I've had to kind of figure a lot of things out on my own when my mom hasn't been around. And so I've never loved people telling me what to do, whether it was teachers or whether it's managers. And so I've always gotten that feedback of, Victoria's very talented, very bright, has a lot of potential, but she doesn't really take direction or instruction well, or, has a hard time transitioning from task to task. And that's always because I'm kind of on my own agenda. And right. I'm very creative by nature. I'm an artist as well. And I'm very, very mission driven and passionate about helping people. And so I would always look at these different jobs and roles that I was in. And I was really thinking at the end of the day, how am I really helping make an impact in someone else's life? Am I really doing that with selling clothing? Am I really doing that with, being in retail? Am I doing that with selling payroll? Whatever it was. And so I think the mission and wanting the flexibility and the freedom, all of those things were really, really important to me. I was also at a point where when our company and network marketing was really introduced to me, I had already had a couple of years of not experience, but kind of being around that industry and making friends with some people that were in a different company. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of started to dip my toes into it a little bit with kind of seeing that world and what it entailed. And really realizing that it wasn't like anything else out there. Luckily, my mom hadn't had any network marketing experience or MLM experience. Some people grow up and they're like, oh, my parents or my so-and-so did company. Right, yeah. Exactly. And so there's always some story in the family of someone that tried it and it didn't work. And then, like Chris always says, he's like, did it not work or did you not work? Right. Pretty brutal, but it's the truth. Yeah. Right. So I kind of got to see a little bit of that world, but ultimately that company, though I liked what they were offering, I really couldn't see myself as, associated with that long term. And so I knew that I'm not a salesperson. I just really have to be passionate about something that I'm offering people and knowing that I'm helping them to do that. And so when this opportunity came to me, literally at a BNI meeting, at a business networking event, I only went there one time and met this lady who, during our day jobs, we could kind of partner up because I was doing payroll and she was doing merchant services and processing. And so she invited me out to a luncheon, and I just came with an open mind. I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to see. I have no idea what this is. But just heard an incredible story and presentation and was just blown away by the company that I'm now with. And I just knew that I absolutely, without a doubt, had to have this service. And I knew that if I knew about this service and I saw the immense value in it, I was going to want to go out and share it with other people and empower them in that way as well. And I think also being an immigrant coming from another country where people don't really have access to their rights, for me, the mission just lined up tremendously. And so I realized pretty early on that I was going to have to work harder on myself than on the business or anything else I was going to do. And it was so interesting because I had just gotten my master's in organization and leadership. And it's, I was reading these books and all these theories and concepts. And I was like, okay, Victoria, this is your opportunity to actually step into your greatness, to be a leader. First and foremost, lead yourself, and then you're going to have an opportunity to really see what you're made of, to be able to be in a role to lead others. Because network marketing and building teams in network marketing is so unique. Reminds me of my days of being a site director for a nonprofit organization, and I had over, I think it was 150 community volunteers. So I knew what it looked like to lead and inspire, train, and motivate volunteers, people that could quit at any moment, right? And that's very much network marketing.
Sure.
And so at the end of the day, like, I don't employ anyone. People are here people are here on their own accord, And so again, just, it was seeing the opportunity for leadership, seeing an incredible company with a long history and a track record, knowing that I was passionate about what I was going to be sharing with people, knowing that I had to step into my greatness, stretch myself. And I knew that pretty much the majority of everything else that was out there, I was going to be working for someone else, and I was going to be building their dream. And I was just honestly just sick and tired of that. And I knew, I was like, you know what, this is the time where I'm going to work harder for myself than I've worked for anyone else. And if that means I'm going to cry myself to sleep some nights, and I'm going to have to, do some real hard, reality checks on who am I, and have I healed from traumas, and how do I present myself, and how do I talk to people, and all these different things. I knew that was going to give me the opportunity to do that. So, so those were the things that I saw, and the things that really, stood out to me. And I knew that I had to take that leap of faith, just like partnering with Chris, and he came into my life. I was like, I just had no doubt in my mind that was what I needed to do. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to take the leap of faith. And so it's been incredible. So.
Neat. Well, we'll use that as a segue. Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got connected? It sounded like from your initial introduction piece about you kind of reached out to Victoria, and there's some connection there. And so tell us a little bit about how you got involved and why, relative to what you've done in the past, and how did that change your perspective on things?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really passionate about this response. I've always been a challenging person, growing up with my mom, being exposed to some adult stuff that I'm very thankful for. When I was 21 and I lost her, I was ready to be on my own and really take on the world a little bit. I just didn't know how. And so I always tell people I've worked in almost every model of compensation. I worked in, trading time for money in small business, franchise. I've worked in, the performance-driven economy. A lot of people, don't really understand that right now in corporate jobs, many places are offering you a great salary that used to be a full salary, but they've cut it in half and gave you bonuses. So my experience in the corporate world was that they would always dangle the carrot on the stick, and me being that challenge-driven person, I was always like, let's make it happen, right? And so I was always burning myself out because I was working, 80, 90-hour weeks. Plus, I always thought that the degree was the answer, so, and we're always chasing after that 6-figure income because we know that's like the measurement of who people are. So when I left my corporate job and I really assessed kind of where I was, I just realized the job did nothing for me, and so what's interesting is like right before this opportunity, right after the opportunity fell in my lap, I think it was like a season of preparation because I had to get really comfortable with being in my own skin and, processing trauma as well. When I lost my mom, I dealt with some PTSD stuff in my 20s. I had to intentionally work into the person I am now. So I love Tony Robbins' quote that he says, every time you see somebody who's kind of awarded successfully in public, years of work went into that moment. And I'm a big catalyst and believer in that because my goal here is to inspire people as much as possible. Doesn't matter what your opportunity is, just be thankful for it. But when this opportunity fell in my lap, honestly, it wasn't even about the company. It was really about the person who dropped it in my lap because I saw it 4 years prior and said no. I was cold market prospected in my home state in New York. I was in a different place in life. And the way I saw it, I was just like, no, I'm good. I didn't even think about pyramid, this, that, whatever. I was just like, no, I'm good right now. And so it just speaks to, that bridge I always talk about of sponsoring somebody, where it really is truly about the relationship. And, when that opportunity got dropped in my lap, it's interesting. I was in the insurance world, because when I saw my opportunity, I was like, this looks just like insurance to me. Compensation, everything. I mean, there's a broker who's making money off my efforts, except I don't know who that is, and they're not training me or doing anything else. I'm just giving them money. And so when I saw it, I said, great, what else is there? And then I went on a Zoom call, actually, and we're part of a group called the Millennium Movement in our company, which was intentionally created to kind of reinvigorate this company by non-millennials. It was actually a guy who answered my question, who was a 40-year-old attorney, or 40-year attorney, very well educated, and very Southern as well, which is awesome. We connected. He answered my questions, and I was like, do I get to work with you? And he said, yes. I said, I'm in.
Cool.
Because for me, it's always about people. I'm an extroverted person, and law of association was a big deal to me. I had a lot of broke friends back in New York, doing broke things, offering broke advice. And, still doing the same crap we were doing back in our 20s. And I was like, if I go back to New York, I'm going to get the same things I've always gotten. And so, like Jim Rohn says, you do what you've always done, you get what you've always got. So I said, why not? I didn't see the big picture on the wall until, I recruited somebody for a business who took this company the following month, and we had no idea what we were doing. And then I did the same thing the following month and had a massive month, more money than I've ever seen. It was just over $20,000. And I mean, I was hooked. It was like, it wasn't even about the money. It was about what was happening with the people that we were involved with. And that's when it truly hit me that this is what I've been waiting for my entire life, because, I've learned how to scale through problems, being broke and going through some challenges. And people that I kept meeting, very rarely did I talk about our opportunity that I recruited. It was very much big picture things, like, where do you see yourself in the next 10, 15 years? And most people had no idea. And so when I started asking them the question, it's just because they never had the time freedom to even investigate that.
Right.
And so I said, I can do something incredible here. So my why scaled from financial freedom and helping folks with the service to now here we are a year later. And it's included, me wanting to scale the ability to bring personal development books like, This Thing Never Leaves My Side, but a book like Think and Grow Rich into every school in America, and wherever it is, because this is the stuff we should be reading, to, wanting to, build a team of, 200,000-300,000 people internationally and domestically, because not for any other reason than to show people that it's possible, and to know that we have that impact to show them. Because in my opinion, if you talk to me about network marketing, right up front, if you ask me what I do, I always tell people I'm a professional network marketer. And people look at you like you're crazy. They're like, whoa, hold on a second. And it's because my posture has changed, because in network marketing, we can condense our time frames down. But more importantly, if I disarm your major objection, now you're going to hear why. And I always tell people, lead with the why, not the what. And so when I share why, I'm like, listen, it just works. Listen, $160 billion industry, bigger than movies, gaming, and music combined. Companies like Amway, they built stadiums. The number one income earners of all time bring in $2 billion a year in sales. So I can't hate on that. Whatever your opportunity is, work it. And so I meet network marketers and other companies all the time. I actually train other teams. I offer them, the skills, because I learned some of those in the insurance world, brought those over, because I want people to do it the right way. I feel like if we do it the right way, more and more people will hear more about it. And they should, because it's a life-changing opportunity. As long as, like Victoria said, you work it. It's not net play. It's not net chill. It's network marketing. You only have to learn a handful of skills. But if you learn them, they can change your life and the lives of your kids and their kids. And why not, when your great-grandkids are thinking about why they have the lifestyle they have, they're like, listen, my great-grandfather was part of that millennial movement thing, and they built this massive business. And now here we are providing opportunities to people that had no clue. Yeah. I had families in West Texas who had, generations of poverty, and now have, books like Think and Grow Rich, or how to Win Friends and Influence People in their lives, that may not impact this generation, but will impact future generations to come, because they're not getting that in the school system.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about, expand a little bit more on that side relative to the kind of self-improvement piece. And I want to twist this a little bit to make sure that we address those that are not necessarily in network marketing, but might be outside of network marketing and helping to support. So with that, the kind of personal development, and you talk about, I've heard you mention Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn and a couple other folks, the Think and Grow Rich and some of these other books and people and things like that. What are some of those things that you feel like have helped both yourself, but then also maybe even just as you support Victoria, and maybe Victoria you can jump into as you support Chris? Like, how does that work relative to working with someone who's also, in your case, in the same business, but even if they weren't, obviously you'd have to support and kind of play off each other. So tell me kind of how that works and how that ties into the self-improvement, self-development kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. There's so many people that aren't my business or our business that we network with, that we're very close with, that I've introduced them to some of these principles and philosophies. And to be fair, I mean, when I talk to somebody and I ask them what their philosophy is on money or relationships, most people have no clue what I'm asking them because we never get taught to even think about them. I think that the principle is that if you took away my company tomorrow, just like any CEO, I used to watch Undercover Boss when I was younger. And I was like, how are these CEOs going from industry to industry and still winning and doing incredible jobs? And I started realizing it had nothing to do with the industry, but more about that person and the value they brought. And so now it's like I dove into personal development because a 24-year-old partner of mine that I really respected gave me a list of like 60 books. And I said I was going to read them all by convention from April of last year to March of this year. And I read about 50 of them, not to brag or boast, but that's because I just knew I had to create bigger arms, and I had to be bigger to lead more people. The law of the lid is so important, but as it relates to Victoria, we had some big things going on. When she first moved into Texas, she had massive adversity. She had lost her grandmother in Ukraine, so she was going through grief. I had not processed all my grief from losing my mom, and so the interesting thing is like a book that she gave me that changed my life was The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And, be impeccable with your word, always do your best, never take things personally, never make assumptions. So simple that you could overlook, but so powerful if you put them into place. And
slow down and say those again, Chris, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Be impeccable with your word.
Okay.
Never take things personally. Always do your best. And never make assumptions, always do your best, never take things personally, and be impeccable. Yeah.
Good.
Yep.
Thanks. Yeah,
and so the most important thing I started realizing was being impeccable with my word to myself, because everything flows forth from me. And I can't expect other people, like people think this leadership thing is like this big complicated thing that we make it sound like in an MBA program. First of all, an MBA program is business administration, not MBO, Masters of Business Ownership. So we're administering somebody else's business. But leadership truly emanates from leading yourself every single day. Getting up in the morning and doing what you're supposed to do and growing every single day. It doesn't have to be this overly complicated thing. And so what I realized is that if I can lead myself, I can be a better partner for Victoria, especially while we're serving so many people. And it's not perfect. We have a lot of growth to go through.
Sure.
But I can lead someone else because she lives with me. She sees it. Mm-hmm. She sees me with these things in my ears all day long, And so in many ways, she leads me as well, because she's an introverted person by nature, but she stretched herself so much to do this business because she's very mission driven. And so it's humbled me a lot and really showed me perspective, because I otherwise would just be burning myself out from both ends. So, if you're not in this industry, that's okay. The principles in the personal development, industry are really there because we have to understand that contrary to what traditional business teaches us, 95% of what we do is transformation before information. And so everything flows forth from us. And so what we do in our businesses, whether you're insurance, real estate, you're going to find that people who sell real estate, first of all, like 90% of real estate agents lose money when they first get their license. I think the average is $28,000, and the top 1% make like $250 a year. But many people sell a home before they even get licensed because they've already been growing and building relationships with others. And so we have to almost deprogram all these things we've learned as kids. Don't talk to strangers. All these little things. And even in relationships, like how many times as a guy, have you met a woman that you were intimidated by because they were like really killing it in life, and you're like, I'm only making like 30, 40K a year. There's no way she's going to like me. Or, to be real, how many relationship problems happen when a guy's not earning what they think they should be earning, when a woman is like, I love you anyways, it does not matter, but we interject those assumptions,
Yep.
So
Yep.
those are some powerful things. And I'll turn it over to Victoria, but that's kind of like my perspective as I grow.
No, that's really good.
I could be better. Yeah.
That's really good. So Victoria, what is some of those same kind of thoughts as far as self-development and self-improvement stuff, but then how does that work in supporting Chris and then also other folks that are on your team?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been on the personal development, personal growth journey since my early 20s, really, because, having a really traumatic childhood and having to really figure things out a lot on my own, and seeing my mom kind of go through that process of failing forward as well. Even though she was she's been a huge role model for me in a lot of ways in my life. There were some instances where I knew that she didn't have the answers. And so I had to go out and seek those answers, or at least seek better questions, right? So for me, it started very early on. I think for myself, for anyone, there has to be an underlying desire to know, or to at least believe or think that there's more to this life than meets the eye. There's so much going on here that, people are just constantly in just a loop of a rat race. They live in the same place for their entire lives. They don't travel. They don't explore. They don't take risks. They don't overcome fear. They settle in relationships. They settle with themselves. They go to jobs that they hate. They never make or do or strive for more in their lives. And I don't know, ever since I was a kid, I always just had this feeling that there was more to this life. And I think that, plus the fact that I had lived in so much unhappiness and depression for so long because of what I was always coming home to, that I wanted to seek those answers. And so, of course, the universe conspires in a perfect way that when it was the right time, the right messages came to me, the right books came to me, the right audios came to me, the right authors. And so it's been finding different people for different stages of my life and stages of my growth, and learning who has what messages. You have people like Jim Rohn for network marketing and kind of just building a business. And you've got people like Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith, who is really talking about envisioning. You've got Tony Robbins, who's a peak performance coach and really helping you, like he says, snap out of, whatever you're in right now, change your physiology, you change your future, different people, and really looking inward and really realizing that I am the universe and I am love, and all of these things that everyone else always thinks is so like fluffy and hokey pokey and laugh at. And Chris and I have talked about this before, and we've talked about it with others, that usually the things in life that people ridicule or laugh at are probably the things that are actually the truth. Mm-hmm. And that there's probably someone else that has twisted it around to make it look like that's all hokey pokey, to really veer you in a different direction, into the direction that they want you to go in. Right. And so it's just a hunger. It's like literally, like Les Brown says, you got to be hungry. And that's what it feels like. I feel hungry every day to learn more, to be a lifelong student. And I thought for a long time that meant traditional school. That's why I was excited about going to grad school. Nobody forced me to go to grad school. Like, that was my own free will. I was ready to go on and get a doctorate. I wanted multiple doctorates, but it was just because I constantly wanted to grow. I constantly wanted to improve, and I constantly wanted to break the shell that I was in, or shed those layers that were just dead weight, constantly holding me back. And so really, it's crucial to constantly be working on your personal growth and development. You have to heal yourself. No one else can heal you from the things that you've experienced in your life. No one else is responsible for that. And when you learn that everything that you see in others, you see that because you see that in yourself. Everything that I don't like about you is what I don't like about me. Everything that I love about you is what I love about me. Is mind blowing, right? So I have to work on me to be able to truly fall in love with myself, truly take care of myself, so then I can be the best me to Chris, and I can support him and what he's doing, what I'm doing, and ultimately we're building something together, which is massive. I mean, we're together 24/7, and we just celebrated our 1-year anniversary yesterday.
Still together, that's good.
Yes. And I mean, there are couples that are together for years and they stretch it out, but I mean, we're talking about travel, calls, business, on the road, in planes, living together, like all kinds of things that we've been through. So, when I read something and it changes my mind or my perspective or clicks for me, and I feel like, oh my God, Chris has to know about this so that we can relate to it. So I read the 4 Agreements twice, and I was like, I think it's something, worth for him to read. And I've been just amazed at how much he's just completely embraced it. And sometimes you got to be a little careful what you share with your partner, because
then they pull it back on you.
Yes. Like, Victoria, are you making assumptions right now?
Right.
Are you taking it personally? Right?
Well, she shared the mastery of love with me, and I'm like, I can only make my half perfect. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's funny.
But just
That's
really
another book by Don Miguel Ruiz, The Mastery of Love.
Okay.
Just really quickly to add, just to that really quickly, is that what I love about network marketing is that we're not afraid to talk about adversity, and I like sharing the adversity over the success all day long. Anytime I train, because here's the thing: if you solve the biggest problems, you make the biggest paychecks, and the money isn't for just the money; it's an exchange of energy. So if we seek to do something great in this world, we have to thank those problems for coming. So the number one thing that I think me and Victoria have done, and in talking with you and getting to know you as well, I think that's so important, is we all have this narrative playing in our minds, and the moment we can flip it from victimizing to empowering, then things start to change. That was the change for me, and I know it was for Victoria, because I used to say to myself, man, nobody knows who I am, what I've gone through in this world because of what I went through with my mom. And then I started realizing that event is a golden key for me to connect to people. Because when I talk to people, I immediately share that, because I'm an open person. And I think that you should share those things because more people need to connect on a deeper level than just what you do for work. But more importantly, for those of you who are watching this, personal development is not just to feel good. Somebody told me once that a lot of people love personal development, but they never want to have to use it. When you're stranded somewhere after a big event because you don't have the money to get back home, or a car gets repossessed, or all these different things, you can take solace because you got Les Brown in your ear telling yourself, I'm the one, you know what I mean? So more problems, more adversities, more struggle, more this, because you asked the question about our team. Our team is our family, because I started this business to build a family I never had. And so the only way for me to be a good family member, to be somebody who's going to be a beacon of hope for them after they just got a crappy day at work or more crap from their family or whatever, friendship and family to me is an activity, not a title. That's my philosophy. So if I can actively be that person for them, and I can be the one who says, listen, it's not about the business right now. We're here for life. Don't worry about the business right now. Well, that's way different than saying, hey, did you sell something today?
Right.
We don't need any more of that. We need more people bridging the gap to build that relationship. So I just wanted to share that real quick.
I think that's awesome. I think the personal connection is huge. I know even when we just first got on the call, whatever it was a month ago, when we first started talking and were able to just share some individual personal stories about childhood abuse, sexual abuse, and things like that, which has come up a few times on the show, surprisingly, and sort of not surprisingly, I guess, is when you talk about, 1 out of 4 girls and 1 out of 6 boys is sexually abused, and all these things that we've all for so long have not talked about because it's taboo and we don't want to be embarrassed and this kind of stuff. But when you do bring things up, and that's just one example, but there's all kinds of examples, like you said. There's the examples of my credit card couldn't take the $1 confirmation charge that I had to sign up for something. I wasn't gonna. It was a 30-day free trial, but it wouldn't run on the $1 charge. They had to make sure that card really existed, or all those little things, like you said, that are challenges.
It's the good stuff, man.
That builds us, and that's where, when you're going through it, it's not easy, right? I mean, that's the stuff that's really difficult and tough, and we don't want to be going through it. And we're sometimes we ask why me and what's going on and things like that, but when you get through it, I think you look back and you say, boy, that's why that happened, and it all kind of comes around for sure. So what do you think has been, and Victoria, I'll let you start, what do you think has been the biggest challenge when it comes to, again, we'll kind of do two twists. One is kind of being in the business yourself, but then also being supportive of Chris and kind of let's pretend you weren't in the business and it was Chris running the business. How would that, how does that look if you look at it from that? Because I'm sure you have, obviously in the same business, but there's different things you do. There's different connections, different relationships, different situations, different personalities. So how does that work from a challenge perspective, and how do you address those? How do you rise above those challenges?
Sure, absolutely. And just really, really quick to just a thought that I also wanted to make sure I shared about the personal development point was that when you go through the adversities and you're able to share that with other people, that helps them relate to you, to solidify your bond and your friendship, your partnership. But also it's an incredible way to be a coach. Chris and I are very passionate about helping others and coaching others. So it's an interesting third party principle as well, because now instead of Chris and I just saying, oh, hey, we've been through some of that stuff too that you're going through, you can just say, hey, here's a really great book you might want to read. So it's like a total like network marketing thing as well also, because we're constantly using third-party experts. You might hear the same thing from me, but it's not going to click for them until they hear it from someone else, right? And so it's cool to be able to point to those books and to see kind of where I've grown and what books or what leaders or whoever has helped me. And then I can point other people in that direction and say, hey, you're at this phase in your life, you got to read The Mastery of Love, or you're at a different phase and you got to read this other book. So I think
and different personalities too. I think you might recommend something to somebody, or Chris might recommend something different just because he looks at it from a different perspective.
Totally. Yeah. So to your current question, challenges that refresh my memory. So challenges of us working together.
Yeah, just kind of generally in the business in general, but then how in supporting of him and each other, how does what are some of the challenges you faced, and kind of how have you risen above those challenges?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think Chris and a lot of other people would agree with me. Your first challenge is the person you look at in the mirror every day. So we are our biggest challenge always. I think people are always getting in their own ways. We've always got something where we're stuck in our head, or we are letting our past dictate our future. So first and foremost, I have to look at me and what I'm doing and not doing.
Right.
And so I think that's the biggest challenge, because at the end of the day, you are working for yourself. You don't have, Chris is not my manager, Chris is not my boss, and no one else is my manager or my boss. And so especially when you're doing this business, you're in this industry full time, that's when it's like, oh crap, okay, I gotta make, stuff happen.
Right.
So that's the first key. So again, it goes back to being impeccable with my word and me being my best, so that I can bring that to the partnership. And so I think those are some challenges. I've also had to say goodbye to some people that I've loved and that I've really cared about, that were really great friends. And Chris has kind of seen me experience this. You grow and you bring new people into your life. And unfortunately, there are some people that you might love very dearly that might not really support you in what you're doing. They might not see it the way you see it.
That's hard.
No matter how hard you try, they see it as you selling them something, or
Right.
Now you're in some weird thing. Oh, you're in one of those
you're
things.
In this cult. Yeah, you're in this cult. Of some sort. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I've really lost some friends. I've had people block me. I've had people stop talking to me. So the social, that, like Eric Worre says, that temporary loss of social esteem is huge. It can really weigh on you on a day-to-day. and you have to keep picking yourself back up. And, it's also a challenge to be in a position where, no human being wants to be, kind of set themselves up for rejection, but this is an industry, this is a business of rejection. And it's like, you got to be like, yeah, I want a, chocolate fudge sundae of rejection today. Like, I love that stuff. We had one of our meetings last week, and we cheered and applauded like crazy, because one of our teammates talked about getting a no that day and how they got hung up on, and we're like, yes, you got hung up on. That's amazing. Like, you gotta know. It was wonderful. So, challenges of us, working together, or Chris doing the business. I think Chris very much had the mindset of doing this full time and what that looked like before I did. I think he's been adulting for longer than I have, just because, he lost his mom, and he was kind of thrown out into the world, and has had the ups and downs, and hasn't had any of that comfort. Yeah. And while I've had, some adversities in my life, I have been blessed in that my mom is still here. And my mom and I are very, very close. And so in some ways, she's really kind of, scooped me in and given me a hug and held me tight. And so that's been something where we've really had to kind of work out, like, okay, Victoria, well, why aren't you doing this? Or how come you don't get this? And so it's taken this whole year to really figure out, like, okay, Chris is like full, mindset. I had to catch up to him. But at the same time, how do we find the balance of, okay, you're like diving off the deep end and could potentially burn yourself out. How do I stand next to you as a strong woman and a strong partner and say, I absolutely support you 100%, babe. But at the same time, I got to pull you back sometimes a little bit so that you take care of yourself, and that we have relationship time. And so that, we're able to grow as partners outside of the business. How are we, not constantly talking about the business 24/7, because everything revolves around the team. Right. And again, because the team is family for us, we care a lot. And so people have had deaths, people have had births, people have had marriages, they've had all kinds of different things. And that affects us, that energy affects us, and we care. And so it's hard to really have balance. I think balance is not really something that exists. It's something that people talk about, but you definitely have to have those moments where it's like, okay, 1 year anniversary, birthday, whatever, like that phone is off. And no,
that's what I heard.
No, we can't talk about business. You know what I mean?
I heard that you guys turned off your phone yesterday for the 1 year anniversary thing. So you just separated from the world. Half the day. That's awesome. I mean, that's a big deal, especially in the network marketing world, obviously, and even the fact that it's a weekend, right? You think, well, it's just Saturday. Everybody shuts down Saturday, right? But that's in this.
Nope. And really quick, just to end on that as well, our industry is so unique in that we don't have the 8 to 5, 9 to 5 hours. So even for me, when we partnered up, I was like, why are we at dinner and he's taking calls, or he's on the phone, or he's stepping away from dinner, or why are we going there or doing this or whatever? And, he's getting pulled away. And then once I started getting really plugged in and doing the work, then the same thing started happening with me. Right. So I think for people that aren't in a partnership and they are, they are the person that's supporting the person that's in network marketing, it's really having that kind of communication and understanding of, hey, babe, like I might have to step away for a 3-way call during dinner. This is how you build a business, because we're taking calls and we're doing trainings and we're doing all kinds of things at 9 p.m. on a Sunday or 10 p.m. on a Sunday. It's unconventional hours, but at the same time, we might be able to choose when we wake up and get out of bed that other people don't, you know what I mean? Or we might be able to take a break during the middle of the day that people don't see. And so it's that kind of, I think, communication and setting those expectations that, okay, how do we manage our time? How do we manage our time together? It's a little bit easier that we're in the business together, but I think for couples that aren't working the business together, they're not in the same industry, it's even more crucial because you've got, the male or the female, whoever, or whatever partnership that looks like, right? And you've got an 8 to 5, that person came home from work and now the network marketers actually like their day has just begun
starting,
from 5 to 10, right? So that's really important.
Yeah, I'll let Chris jump in on that too. And I just kind of some of the ideas with from a challenge perspective, but then also the same kind of thing that Victoria was just talking about relative to time and how you guys work together. And I understand that you guys do some coaching from the corporate side with your business as well. And I'm wondering if you guys ever talk to that fact of kind of what Other Side of the Selfie is all about, which is how do you, as the network marketer, bring your spouse, significant other, whatever, into the picture, and how, if you guys ever talk to those that are the significant other, what do you tell them when they're working with somebody that's in the business, how to deal with some of this stuff and some of the challenges that come up?
Yeah, that's.
Did I ask too many questions there?
No, that's actually pretty interesting because that's actually one of the challenges me and Victoria have. But Matt, let me ask you a question. If I join on my iPad, is it going to disrupt anything? Because my phone has been eating up battery. I came on like 90%, and it's already almost.
Nope. I can move you off of the show for a second, and then you can jump back in with that same link that I sent you.
The same link. Okay, perfect. I'll do that just real quick.
All right, I'll push you out. All right, Victoria, it's just you and me for a sec. So do you guys ever talk to the idea of the relationship piece? I know you kind of ended what you were talking about a second ago relative to, if one person's in it, it's different for you guys because you're both in it. But if it's just one person in and there's a significant other in the picture, how do you help that person to kind of either bring their significant other in, or to the person who's outside of the network marketing? What do you tell them and talk to them about how to work with somebody who's deep in this stuff?
Absolutely. We always emphasize that if someone is coming into the business, that their significant other, their spouse, definitely knows about it, that they know what it's going to kind of entail, know what services they're offering, what kind of training they might be doing. So they really get a feel for it, and so they have buy-in. Buy-in is so crucial, whether you have a spouse that's in the industry with you or not. And I think it goes for anything, but especially this industry, because it's something where you're really building something for yourself, for your family, right? And so if you don't have someone that's really believing in you and believing in what you're doing, it's going to make it a whole lot harder. And I know, Chris can speak to this for sure, if he wants to, but, I'll just mention really quickly, when I got into this business, in this industry, I was in in another relationship, and, I believed in it more than my significant other did, more than my mom even did. And so I literally went against everyone because I knew that this was something that was going to be it for me for the long run. And I have to tell you, I didn't have any buy-in whatsoever from my significant other. And did it weigh on me? For sure. For sure. Because when the weekends rolled around or it was time to, unplug, then it was like, I can't think of being on calls or doing network marketing type things. And because he had experience with, his mom doing network marketing when he was a kid, it was a lot of negative stigma. And so I didn't have that buy-in, and I definitely let it affect me, even though I thought it hadn't at the time. It did. And, Chris will, I've heard him say before that, just Chris, you can speak to it, but you were saying that probably in your last relationship, I think probably just the trust and the networking and everything that we do, the trust level has to be very, very high, and that you probably might have not been able to be in this industry with your previous relationship. But I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, I think that's really important, just to kind of contextually pick up on the question. I think, man, this when I think about where I was in that relationship too, it's interesting when I talk to people and we talk about laws of association, because I'm so serious about that. I often ask, and that's an amazing class, by the way. I ask people, you know,
I had hidden myself. Sorry.
Yeah, it's all good, man. That's good. That's good. You know, we talk about the 5 closest people that you spend time with, and it's so interesting because sometimes a spouse is so ready to go on that journey. And I'm like, so let me ask you a question. Would your spouse increase or decrease your law of association on health, wealth, finances, or legacy? And that's a tough conversation.
Right.
You know, and so I'm very upfront and I say, listen, you know, I built this business completely cold market. I'm not asking you to do everything that I did. What I'm telling you is that it's possible. I mean, I know people who built this business in their car. I know people who built this in the midst of a divorce, in the midst of a tragedy. This will make something of you in the process. And so one of the things that you're going to have to understand is that you cannot control what your spouse does. That person has to come to their own point of conclusion, because if you're selling or convincing somebody at all, you're going to have to sell or convince them again over and over and over again. And to be frank with you, I've seen relationships kind of fall apart because it's a true test. But unfortunately, sometimes a spouse can be the first dream stealer. And, you know, it's so fascinating to me because when you bring some people into the business and you start talking to them, they're so excited. And then something happens where they go into witness protection because, you know, they may have shared it with their parents or something like that or whatever. And all of a sudden, there's a difference between objective, factual-based conversation and subjective, like, let me give you my opinion.
Opinions, yeah.
So when people hop on the phone and they ask me for their opinion and I'm a third-party expert, I immediately just say, Matt, listen, I appreciate that. I know you're concerned, but listen, we're a 46-year-old company. We're not asking for an opinion on whether or not it works. We have 5 million people we serve. So I'm pretty sure if those 5 million people had a problem, they'd tell everybody else.
Right.
You know, and I go right in and it's like, listen, you know, college right now for most people, they're not getting return on their investment at all, and they're buying into student loans. Yeah. So I try to educate as much as possible. When I first started, I was very kind of emotional, because I just want to be that person who kind of shakes people alive, you know, because like Victoria said, when my mom passed away at 21 years old, you know, the bills didn't stop coming, you know, life didn't stop happening, and so it's tough because you have to teach people that lesson that, you know, you have to be able to stand up on your own 2 feet. But I'm a firm believer in, you know, you have to educate spouses. You know, make sure they see the information the way that you saw it, do it the right way. Introduce them to the partners you're working with, because I take for granted, but here's the thing that I did when I met Victoria is that I was very intentional about this partnership. You know, if you go on my Facebook page right now, you know, when I talked about our 1-year anniversary, I mean, I was ready to either be single for the duration of time it took me to build this business, because I had already had relationships up to this point, or I really wanted an empire and a partnership. And that partnership means it wasn't just a spouse or a girlfriend or anything else. I mean, this is somebody I can talk to about this, that I know is going to be growing with me, that's going to be, you know, partner in business, travel, crime, life, whatever that is. You know, and so awesome. When we met, we had some really upfront conversations that Victoria can tell you, because, you know, when she was in the business, you know, she hadn't had a tremendous amount of success, really, because I don't think she was in that season yet of her life for it. But when I first started, I mean, it was like, we're on. Like, we had a team building, we had a market built, we were doing events, we had to do everything. And so I was learning network marketing, I was learning team building, I was learning all these things. And I think at the time I was prepared for it, because that first step was leading myself first. And then, you know, helping her understand. I mean, I'm very relentless when it comes to things. I'm a quick launch off the cliff kind of person. Victoria is a very thoughtful, detail oriented person. And so one of our mentors, and here's something I'll recommend to people, is that we're really intentional when we go to events within our company. We're looking for mentorship with people who have what we want and have been where we've been. So we're looking for couples in the business. You know, 2 of our really close mentors, John and Elizabeth Gardner, you know, we had a conversation with them, and they said, listen, when John has a big picture idea and his leg is tapping and he's on the board writing stuff, you know, don't bring up obstacles, let him do his thing, and just say, hey, that sounds really good, let me get back to you on it. And then a day later, maybe share some things in a way that says, this is the problem, but here's a solution, not shoot everything down right away. So when we first started, that was our biggest challenge, was that Victoria's mind was getting stretched and stretched and stretched. and for me, I'm like, let's get it all. Let's go after all of this. Yeah. I'm like, you know, our team is called the Takeover Family for a reason. Like, we want to take over everything. And I'm just constantly thinking, The big picture idea is like, we went out yesterday for our anniversary, and I mean, we were in a Louis Vuitton store yesterday. I've never walked foot into a Louis Vuitton store yesterday. I have partners who have Louis belts and everything else, and I think they're crazy. And I'm looking at this thing, and I'm like, man, this is actually really nice. And so I'm sitting there talking to Victoria, and I'm like, for whatever reason, it challenged my philosophy of, wanting bigger and better. But I'm like, listen, you have to start stretching yourself. But I think we balanced each other so differently. As far as like, spouses in the corporate world, my last company I worked for has one of the highest rates of divorce of any company in any industry. Just massive amounts of divorce because I was working 80 to 100-hour weeks. It was high burnout, low resources, get the job done, whatever it takes, phone calls on the weekend. I had an iPhone, an iPad, and a personal iPhone that were all linked together, and they would just ring at all times. And so, it was just constant stress. And I remember the thing I looked forward to most was coming home and popping my PlayStation on and literally just sitting there and chilling and vegging out for a while and not doing anything. So what we have right now is a blessing because when people choose to follow you in a volunteer army, like that is an absolute blessing that we need to be really serious about. And I think the biggest challenge me and Victoria had is, she embraced the work for yourself lifestyle a little bit too much in the beginning. So she balanced me out. She balanced me out in the self-love department, and I balanced her out in the action-taking department. Because I am legitimately like a driver when it comes to being on time. But it all works when you realize everything's perfect the way it's supposed to be.
Have you guys read John Acuff's book called Punch Fear in the Face?
No, haven't heard of that. No,
I think it's called. I think it may just be called Stop, or it's something about punch fear in the face, and the idea is the same kind of deal what he just described, and what you talked about the different types of personalities when an idea comes up, and it says you have wow people and you have how people, and so for the wow people, let them do their wow, let them have their wow moments, and let them get through that before you start talking about how, and you give them 24 hours, like you said, or 48 hours, whatever it is that you decide. And then come back and discuss the house. And it was even so much that the spouse, his wife, would say, wow. Like that was her response. Whatever it was that his idea was, she would say, wow. And just kind of go along with his wow for a moment and then come back to it and address it a little bit later and talk more through the how. And he would say, typically, within 24 hours, either I would have forgotten about the idea completely or I would have realized myself how stupid it was, and don't even go there. So I think that kind of how and wow breakdown I think is good.
That reminded me of Owen Wilson saying "Wow."
Wow. Yeah, right. I like it. That's good. We're going to wrap up here. If you guys can maybe each give us kind of a 1-minute recap of what you would say is a lesson learned in the network marketing world, and then also as being the significant other of somebody in this business. Victoria, why don't we start with you? Or Chris, why don't we start with you?
No, it's fine. We'll let Chris have the last word.
All right. How about I'll have the last word? That way neither one of you have to fight about that.
Perfect, because we don't have a patriarchal relationship where it's he's got the last word or I'm the woman and so I get the last word, whatever. But so kind of closing remarks on network marketing and being in a partnership.
Lesson learned.
First and foremost, never ever stop growing. Be a better you today than you were yesterday, tomorrow than you were today. And that can only then translate in a positive way into your partnership, whether your spouse is in network marketing or not. And it's going to have a positive impact in all of your interactions with anyone in your life. Yeah. Communication is really huge. Trust is really huge. I would really say that also doing a lot of reflection, like whether that's like different like assessments or seminars or different things, really have a good understanding of who you are and share the positives and the quote unquote negatives with your partner, and vice versa, so that you can be upfront and you can say, hey, these are my areas of opportunity, or hey, I really struggle with this, but I'm really good about this, or I'm really passionate about this. And so that's one of the things that Chris and I have had to figure out, that I don't necessarily have to focus so much on my weaknesses. Let me bring the best things to this partnership, and you bring the best things, and then we're going to have the best partnership.
Yeah.
And awesome. Then those other things that maybe like I hate doing and they just don't light me up, they're just going to drag me down, and they're going to drag us down, right? So that's one of the things. Awesome. And this is kind of random, but I think being very forgiving of yourself and of your partner, and literally just being able to be like, someone that, even if you had a blow up, or you had a moment where you didn't see eye to eye, or whatever it might have been, just to acknowledge each other, apologize, and just move forward, and just not get stuck on what happened 20 minutes ago, or 2 days ago, or 20 days ago. I think that that's just so crucial in any partnership and relationships. And also back to the point of losing temporary social esteem. Guess what? Now, a few years into it, I'm getting that tenfold back from new amazing people that are coming into my life that love and adore and appreciate me, and see the value that I bring, and are attracted to me, and are attracted to Chris and to us as leaders and as partners. And it just keeps me going and keeps me excited. So I just want to tell people, just keep going. Just awesome. More than anything, just don't quit. Just keep going. Even if you do it slowly, just keep going, and just don't give up on yourself, and don't give up on your dreams, and find more and more people to surround yourself with that believe in you and see a vision as well.
Awesome. Cool. Chris, how about yourself?
Yeah.
Lessons learned.
Victoria hit on a lot of things on the head. First and foremost, be patient with yourself. You will make a lot of mistakes. Especially in our business, because you can condense time frames down. You're going to live a lot of life. I got taught very early on that if you choose to live life in network marketing and service to many, because service to many leads to greatness. I mean, you're going to live a lot of life in the meantime. You're going to see more births, more deaths, more divorces, more marriages. You're going to meet more people, and so you have to always be constantly present and aware. Friendship and family is an activity in the title. That is my main philosophy at all times. So that goes both sides. Relationships are the name of the game. Don't ever try to withdraw from an overdrafted bank account, so to speak.
Right.
And so, we get paid tremendous amounts of money to do what people otherwise couldn't do. And we're not here to sell or convince anybody. If you sell or convince people into your opportunity, you're going to be selling and convincing them all the time. Don't seek answers, ask yourself better questions. Always be asking questions at all times, and empowering questions. Don't ask why you're bad at something. Ask yourself what it would look like if you became a master at something.
That's neat.
Show yourself more love, for sure, because, the more love you show yourself, it's going to go to others. Definitely do not pour out of your cup that which you don't have, because you need to constantly pour back into. But I'll leave you with this, and this is what I leave with everybody, and it's something that I want to be known for. But, when you ask for greatness, and to be tested, you're going to be tested on the force of nature you've chosen to become, because you're the person who can see what others cannot see, hear, or feel, because you're an infinite being, and you're generating the vision that you have in your minds. And that's powerful. Remember that when you're on your deathbed, it'll never be about the hours that you worked or anything else, but more so about the experiences that you've had and the way people say your name. And that's it.
Awesome. That's awesome. Way to finish up. That's good stuff. Well, thank you guys very much. I really appreciate it. It was a great conversation, and enjoyed certainly the time, and appreciate what you guys are doing and how you work together, and a good example for those around you. And I think it was a great thing for folks to watch and feel free. You guys share. Anybody else who's watching, share it with somebody who you think might need this. Doesn't matter what kind of network marketing they're in. The idea here is just to support those that are out there working their hardest and trying to make a living at this stuff. So thank you very much. And hopefully we'll be in touch soon with some other stuff. But join us next week, next Sunday night at 8 o'clock. And I'll say peace out from the other side of the selfie.
Thank you so much, Matt. We appreciate
Thanks, Matt.
you.
This is great.
Bye-bye.